Okay, thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I think by Tom Henderson, General Manager at the Sunshine Mine. And I gotta say, sometimes, sitting in on the Natural Resource Committee it's kind of like going to a family reunion in a way. But I'll tell you why. One, you kind of know everybody, but also when you go to the family reunions, you have that gathering, or even in your own family, you always have like that one kid or one relative in there, and you just go, well, I'm just gonna go and tolerate them. And if you all have that, I mean, if you don't, then you're that person. But because Sunshine's the only one who's consistently been showing up here over the last couple of years, and we're the only mining company on a natural resource committee. And so I would love to see more resource producers here, besides the regulators. NGOs are great, some of the private groups that do a lot of the great environmental work here. But there are producers that are also help drive the equation for growth in the area. And so we're the redheaded stepchild, if that's politically correct thing to say. I don't know. Anyways, I'm just going to give you kind of a high level update on what's going on up at the Sunshine Mine. Everybody has varying degrees of knowledge about whether it's about the Silver Valley and what's taken place over the last 140 years. Certainly, a lot of people know some of the bad things that happened, but there's always that other side too. There were good things, and there's just a hard reality in this world that you need minerals. And just about everything that we do, it's just how do you get them? And everything's always evolving from how we mined 100 years ago to how we mine today. A lot of times we're stuck in the reputation of the past, but it's not necessarily the reputation of today or what we're doing. I've got Mike Irish joining me. He's our manager of process and environmental. He's part of the design team for doing the next set of technical studies in and around processing environmental. And he's a fanatic about trying to get everything to approach recycle water and near net zero discharges. Things that were unheard of even 30, 40 years ago, but now eminently doable. And even how tailings are dealt with, that even moving away from wet storage to dry, encapsulated, maybe even partially cemented type tailing storage facilities that are benign, but they're also not going to fail and then dump into a stream and into a lake. All right, I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'm just going to give you a brief update as to where we're at. So kind of the update today for the good of the group is just a little bit on the Silver Valley and on the Sunshine Mine history. What's our current business plan? We're private, so we're not a public company. We're not out trying to raise money from people. We're not marketing. We're not campaigning. So we like to just stay quiet in the valley, do our thing, do it right. And we're at the same time being open and transparent for those regulators that want to come in, certainly with the tribe, with some other community members, like just come in. We're an open book and we'll share whatever we've got going on. So we're not trying to hide anything. We're also not asking for anything especially in the way of money from investors. And I always get worried about that when I see that going on, whether it's mining or anywhere else. So our future plans, a little bit of discussion on antimony, which has been in the news a lot. If you've heard of antimony, some people still are like, I have no idea what antimony is. I don't even know that's in the news, but we'll touch base a little bit because it's important to Idaho. Some environmental projects, updates, and some community outreach work that's gone on. Some of you may have seen aspects of this presentation in other venues, but I'm not apologizing for that. But for those that haven't, I'll just take you through it. Briefly, Coeur d'Alene Mining District, to the largest degree, it just follows the Osborne Fault. There's a main fault that just rips through the Silver Valley, just over the hill here, and it basically kind of divides the north and the south sections of I-90 going through there. And that place is one of the richest silver districts in the world. So certainly in the United States, it is the richest, and over 1.3 billion ounces of silver have been extracted from the Coeur d'Alene Silver Valley Mining District. None of it surface, all of it underground mining. So deep mines that go in on outcrops where they see a certain amount of visible galena or tetrahedrite type ore occurrences, and those are followed in And as those are mined underground, they get deeper, deeper, and the miners keep following them down. On here, this would be the I-90 interstate, and the main cities, Kellogg, Osborne, Mullen. And as you drive through there, you wouldn't even know that there's this ant farm beneath you as you're driving through. But there are thousands of miles, I will say, of developed areas underground that have been mined or that are still open and being accessed for moving men, materials, air, water, that sort of thing. The only two real producers now that are still operating are the Galena mine outside of Osborne Wallace and the Lucky Friday over in Mullen. But there were thousands of mines, but some of these pickaxes, crosses are some of the other mines that people would have remembered: the Star Morning, the Core, the Silver Summit, Crescent. A lot of these mines, all big producers over the past that for one reason or another are no longer in operation. Typically, mines stop mining not because they're depleted, it's because they're not economic. So obviously, the deeper you go, the more expensive it costs to extract that single ounce of silver. And so most mines will shut down. They get to a certain economic depth, but the vein keeps going. The thing is, commodity markets ebb and flow, just like price of oil or a bushel of wheat, whatever it is. Some years it's high, some years it's low. And any good company, I don't care what business you're in, you're going to return a certain amount of earnings to weather out the low spots. To survive that, when prices come back up, then you reinvest in your business, you keep going, or you take it as dividends. But in a mine, it's expensive if you're not mining and producing to keep it open. It's expensive. It's not like you just turn off the lights, just watch the place. You got to keep your pumps going, ventilation, everything. It's like having to have a lived-in house. You let your house go and you leave it in like Florida or someplace and you don't do anything to it, it's going to rot. So same thing with underground mines. You've got to keep them alive. That's what we're doing with Sunshine. Two development projects that are ongoing is the Sunshine and the Bunker Hill. Two different companies, two different type of deposits, two different approaches. Sunshine history for itself, started in 1884, discovered by some farmers that found an outcrop of silver ore up Big Creek, up where the current day Sunshine mine is at. We've been up there, and they hobby mined it. They hobby mined it for years and years. But their first little load they sent out like it was like 40 tons of silver ore. They didn't really know what they had. It was 1884, 1885. They sent it out, went overland, over horse-drawn wagon to like Missoula or Helena, and they had a process there. And months later, they got a check for $40,000 in 1884. Mm-hmm. So if you look that up today, that's like $600,000. So these are like little hobby farmers growing carrots and vegetables for the other miners in the area. And then they get a check for, what would be $600,000. But they continued to do that for another decade or two and then started to lease it out when they got out of the business. They were known as the Wood Brothers. But as the Sunshine Mine was discovered and as they mined in and as they mined deeper, then the Sunshine Mining Company was formed in 1918. And by 1930, they were really onto something. And then they started to modernize. That's kind of a picture of what we believe to be the Yankee Tunnel number 2, up on top of us. That was a second real producer for silver ore coming out of the Sunshine. That was me in a younger day. Okay, but Sunshine was Sunshine's a different mine than the other mines in Silver Valley. Most of the Silver Valley mines will mine what we'll kind of call a galena type ore. It's a galena, maybe some silver, maybe some zinc associated with it. You just pass that around. Very typical, like Bunker Hill, Galena, Lucky Friday, Star Morning, lead. That is basically galena. So a complex mineral. The Sunshine, for whatever reason, is a silver mine and has very, very, very low grade lead and zinc. So our veins aren't nearly as sexy as when I see that. If I took this rock and that rock, and we host a lot of school tours at the mine, kids gravitate towards that. Oh my gosh, I'm rich. And so do you want this rock? Say, nah, not so much. That has like 2 ounces. That would have, say, probably 2 ounces to the ton of silver. This is what our veins look like. They're not very sexy. And this is polished too, by the way. But that will assay out at about 800 ounces of silver per ton. Big difference. And whatever reason, God has a sense of humor, but he just puts silver basically in the sunshine. And there's very little lead or zinc, almost none. While there's still the requirement for us to capture any lead or zinc that might come out in processing. We have very little. And yet to the north, or to the east and the west of us, we have lead. Anyways, the sunshine modernized in 1935. Up until that point in time, they had such high grade silver ore that they were not producing what we know of as tailings today, or what was dumped into the South Fork of the Coeur d'Alene River. They produced no tails up until 1935. It was jig tables. So they were just high grading the ore that they had and bagging it up because it was so high grade. And then that was being shipped to smelters for further processing. But in 1935, they did put in a concentrating circuit, at which point in time then tails were produced. Sunshine, being a much smaller mine than the other mines in the valley, did produce tails. Those tails did go to the South Fork. They did not go to Big Creek, which is a good news story, because we just learned about that here over the last month or two, that Big Creek as it is still very much a natural stream that we sit on. But tails did make it to the South Fork. And so for a period of 35 years, tails did go from Sunshine down to Flume into the South Fork. But in the mid 60s, early 60s, Sunshine was one of the first adopters of putting their mill tails back underground and storing them. So where hard rock was mined, they replaced that and put the tails back in underground. And though they started to reduce what went into the stream, and then by the full promulgation of the Clean Water, Clean Air Acts through the late 60s, early 70s, all the mines had to put up tailings impoundment systems, and the ability to dump into South Fork was eliminated and prevented. So by mid 70s, Sunshine actually had their first tails impoundment up, and there was no more discharge going. So the mines, well, they all discharged. Sunshine had a shorter period, mainly because a little bit later started on commercial production, and due to the high grade nature of silver and ore and not lead and zinc, they were able to just ship raw ore to the smelters. And then early adoption of putting sand back underground. So I think the big picture from the information I've read, Sunshine was probably like 10% of tails that went to the whole basin, or somewhere in that neighborhood. But also in the 30s, Sunshine started to take out antimony in the ore and then put a full-scale antimony recovery plant in operation to support World War II, right up there at the mine. And from 1930s until the end of operation in 2000, Sunshine produced silver and antimony as their primary products. Some copper, copper is associated with the ore at Sunshine, but really silver, antimony, copper type of payable metals. 1972, there was a large mine fire at the Sunshine Fire. And a fire started underground for unknown reasons. But nonetheless, 91 men's lives were lost that day.
So 91?
91. Wow. Yeah, 91. And it was not necessarily because of carbon monoxide, but because new chemical products were being used that were considered safe. Mainly it was a foam for sealing bulkheads, in and around fan installations and all that. But that foam had caught fire and it puts out phosgene gas.
Oh.
It's well documented, it's well written, but most of the miners have perished due to phosgene gas. So hence again, you need to know the materials you use in your business, whether it's in your plants, underground, wherever you're at. It's not the everyday, it's what happens when the unexpected happens and what happens then. My father-in-law, by the way, was one of the 2 survivors that was trapped underground for 8 days. Wow. So if you read the book, The Deep Dark, 2 men were stuck underground for 8 days. My father-in-law is one of them. He's still around. He's just as ornery now as he was back then. The Sunshine closed in 2001, though, essentially, for as a serious entity, 2001. So 20 24 years ago. Sterling Mining Company, another company had come in, took a shot at reopening the Sunshine. They operated for 13 months or so, and they went into bankruptcy. Company that I currently work for purchased the whole thing out of bankruptcy and settled any liens and debts against that back in 2010, 2011. And we've been holding it and doing care and maintenance there, but principally either just care and maintenance, but over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been doing more in the way of technical studies and approach to, is there another day in the sunshine for the sunshine? We're not saying there is. I believe there is, but you really need to understand it before you can invest large sums of money into that, into putting a mine back into operation. So we're not in operation. So there's a Sunshine Mine. We've got people working there. We're doing underground development, underground drilling, a lot of engineering and technical work going on, but we're not producing anything other than waste rock. That's about it.
Good job.
Can you help a brother out? Okay, thank you. Okay, so if I were to if you were to stand on top of Sunshine and cleave the earth this way, and then take it and open up like a loaf of bread, and then look in, this is what the sunshine would look like, from standing back probably 20 miles. So from where our offices are at, which is right out here, so cross section, right? So we're looking into the mountain or into the earth now, and we have a slice that goes down 6,000 feet. Where our sunshine workings go down 6,000 feet. So the Space Needle's about 600 feet tall. So you've been on the Space Needle. Think of stacking 10 of those on top of each other, and that's how deep our Sunshine Mine is. And we have people in there every day working down in the sunshine. We're about 3-4 miles across this way in width. It's kind of just boggles my mind when you think about all this that's going on underground, and yet to drive through the Silver Valley now, it's beautiful. It's really being well maintained and progressively being updated with all the work with the Basin Commission and the tribe, the cleanups. There's hope there for sure. This just kind of shows you all the number of different veins that we have underground in the sunshine. And this is what we're studying. Some of them have been mined partially. Most of them there's still a lot intact, because back in the day, Sunshine was mining at $1 or $2 an ounce silver. And they were an upper country, so they mined the highest of the high grades, and when they would leave the lower grades behind. But also then as they would mine, then they would start to step out and look for other veins. It started with one vein. We now have 40 veins that we've identified. We've discovered several veins in the last couple of years through our drilling programs. When I talk about drilling, rather than drive big tunnels to get out there to take a look at the rock around us, we do science, and we study the rocks, we study the joints, the faults, and then the mineralogy. We do that through drilling holes and taking our core sample. So we use a hollow diamond. You hear a diamond drill, 4 diamond drill bits. That's a diamond drill bit. So it just drills, has this core, takes a sample, and we drill these about 3,000 feet off of each of our levels in the mine, not only out, but also fans. So we can get a real good idea what the mineralogy and the ore body or the rock around us looks like. And then that goes into 3D modeling, of which geologists will. It's kind of fun to have something tactile to pass around. And then geologists take a look at this, and the models come together, and then we know what we have, and we run samples up for assay.
So Tom, when the folks are drilling, do the people in the field ever see what you get and you're like, oh, we hit something, or does it have to go back into the office and to really tell?
Yeah, the answer is yes,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little no. So the answer is yes. If you're like at the Galena, the Lucky Friday, and you hit that,
Mhm.
you're gonna go, ah, we nailed it.
Yeah.
But a lot of the sunshine ore, it looks like dirt. It's just like, you're like,
Yeah.
what is this? It's a meta sediment. It's not, there's not a lot of shiny metallics in it. So you just look at it and go, I don't know. So you're like, yeah, we hit something different to what we've been drilling. It goes to the geologist, it goes to the lab. The lab comes back, well, you got something here. You have 200, 400 ounces per ton of rock.
Yeah,
So ounces of silver per ton of rock mine is how we call that. With some copper and some antimony. And so that's a good news story.
okay.
So it all depends, but yeah, never, you gotta assay it for sure.
Get to get to,
To go down?
yeah,
Oh, well,
like 3 minutes.
I know that we were hoping to be able to do a tour. One of these days we will, but to go down the shaft, it's like an elevator, right? So it's 8 minutes. Yeah, probably about 8 minutes down. And then then you can walk across the various levels. And it's like going back in the history for sure. It's all rail and the old style of mining, sure. Okay. So just briefly, we have a lot of infrastructure up there from the days that's been maintained, improved, cleaned up, and modernized. So we do have adits tunnels. We have hoists like elevators. This is the ones we currently use here. It looks pretty modern for a place that's been sitting idle for a while, not really producing, but we keep them in very, very, very good condition. The sign of how a place takes care of their property and how they care for the environment is just go walk the property and look at it. If it's clean and tidy, then they care. If it's a mess, or it just doesn't look right, they don't really care. Also look at their safety statistics. We do have a tailings storage facility, and then we have surface infrastructure. So we have a lot of good stuff to work with to start with. So if this mine were to go back in operation, it's not like a whole new restart. It's being kept current, updated, warmed up, ready to go without actually producing. So our business plan, just kind of moving forward now. We'll continue with our safety and environmental management programs, which we have a bunch of those. We are doing underground development and drilling right now. So we are driving about 2 miles of tunnels down on our 2300 and 3100 levels, going out to new territory. And so this is a conventional miners drilling, blasting, putting the rock in their train cars, pulling the train cars out towards the shaft, and then that rock being hoisted up and out. It's kind of what we do. And they work a 7-day, we work a 24/7 schedule now. Keeping a small crew busy, but good group. I'll introduce you to them here in a minute. Doing technical studies, particularly regarding antimony for US, I guess we'll say critical minerals independence, with China and Russia kind of rattling their sabers against the US. A lot of our domestic needs for critical minerals, or really anything, pharmaceuticals, some other manufacturers are being either blocked or they're being charged out at high rates. So there's this whole push towards, let's be a bit more self-reliant in North America and not dependent on China and Russia or countries that really don't care for us. So antimony's really hit the news, and I'll get into that here in a minute. We are replacing our old hoist. Our hoist that we're using was built in 1916. It's the oldest operating hoist, as far as we know, in any mine in the Northern Hemisphere, maybe the Southern. But she's been a sweetheart and she keeps running and running and running. I have 99% availability on that thing. But rule of thumb in mining is you should probably change out your hoist every 100 years or so. It's just a good thing to do. So we're going to go ahead and do it. So that's in process. We're about 20% of the way through that process. We're committed to change it out. So this time next year, there will be a brand new 2026 Nordberg double drum hoist going in that'll be capable of going down to 6,000 feet, and take this one out and give her the respect she deserves. She's done her duty. Probably about 8 million trips is what we've calculated off the counter up and down that shaft. All our sunshine permits that are all active and in good standing, so we keep those all in good standing, but they are up for renewal, and there's new standards that we have to meet on the water quality standards. So we're working now on capturing that data, additional new baseline data. Our biotic ligand copper models are updated. Now we're getting into temperature modeling on water. So these things take some time, so that's going on, but we are engaged with the regulators on doing the process together and just pitch and catch back and forth as we go on the permit renewals.
Is it IDEQ that's your primary
It
regulator?
is, yeah. Okay. And for all the things out of here, our relationship and the ongoing work back and forth with them has been very good.
Nice.
Especially this group here in Coeur d'Alene, under Dan McCracken, and they're responsive. You start with them early and just work with them,
Mhm.
and you can get a lot of things done. There's something about relationships that I'm a big fan of, and that's one of them, so. And then by 2027, so we've given ourselves a 2 year piece of runway here is to complete our feasibility studies. So we have to get in there and develop new areas, drill it, like we've done there, see what's out there, and then do the studies and designs for mill, tailings, an operation, permits, all the things that go with it. And then if the project looks feasible, then make a decision whether or not to put the Sunshine Mine back in operation, but it has to pass and count both the executed, being executable as well as the economic hurdle that it's worth doing. Because really, when you put a project like that together, it's about $500,000 minimally to do it. That we're not going to fund on our own. Okay. Just briefly, local employment. Man, I didn't know how this was going to go, but 6 months ago, we were at really 15 full-time employees. This year, we're starting to ramp up to start these technical studies. We're now at 56. And I'm happy to say that every one of them are all from North Idaho.
Nice.
They weren't here originally. Half of them are coming back from Nevada, from Montana, some from Alaska that want back to North Idaho. There just is an opportunity to be here. So we're still holding at 100% North Idaho. We've got 6 Idaho grads. I didn't put the other college grads there, so if you still there, guys, the rest of you that did not go to Harvard or the West. But for those that did go to the University of Idaho, we've got 6 of them working for us here, and trades from the local trade schools here. We've got a batch of mechanics.
So they had mining experience, just they had to leave
Yes,
the area.
yes, we are just now starting to move in some of the people that don't necessarily have mining experience, but are willing to start learning the trade. And so that's kicking off this summer, basically. But most of them, you're right, they're experienced and knowing. All permits, current good standing. And then working on the renewals. Sometimes you can just tell a lot from pictures too. So I throw things in there just so you can see the pictures. Okay, antimony. Antimony, really strange. 2 years ago, didn't seem like anybody could care at all about antimony. That's just pure elemental antimony there. Yeah. It's like, handling gold, right? But antimony is critical, it's very critical. And it's used in weapons and in metal hardening with the military. There's all sorts of uses, but in general, with the government, it's military related. For domestic, it can be photovoltaics, flame retardants, other uses in the way of an alloying metal. China, Russia, Tajikistan produce 90% of the world's supply of antimony, as currently understood. And China put a block on that last year, saying we're not exporting anything in the way of antimony outside of China. And so that immediately put a big crunch on the antimony market. The US consumes about 25% of the global demand for antimony. So big manufacturing area, but also good, better, and different. They're also big in the defense space. And so a lot of it's been consumed in the defense industry, as well as, but our stockpiles, as best we understand them, some of them are strategic, so we really don't know. Could be around 2 years or less of antimony left in stockpiles for the United States. So there's a big push. This is just the antimony price, what's happened in the last in the last year or so, but we were doing economic analysis of current antimony prices 2 years ago at $5 a pound. It's now at $27 a pound, based on what's being everybody keeping their critical minerals, which is smart. If I was another country and I controlled certain things, I'm not sharing it, and if you want some, you're going to pay. But for a country like the US, it can bring you to your knees on power, green energy for sure, without animal. For whatever reason, the 2 largest sources of antimony in the United States are both in Idaho. The Sunshine Mine, a historic producer of it, and also a historic, I should say, processor of antimony in concentrates to create the metal. And then the other one is the Stibnite mine in central Idaho, east of McCall area. Another mine that wants to be built, but it has not operated for, well, that one's been 60, 70 years, is the Stibnite mine down in central Idaho, but high grade, and gold. Anyways, but both mines have the ability to supply antimony to the US. And they are definitely of interest, and at the Department of Defense, Department of Energy levels as being something that should be looked at.
Tom, can I ask you a question or do you want me to wait?
Go for it.
As far as byproducts, I see flame retardant up there, as far as the uses. Do we know what byproducts come from the production of, or after the processing? I'm thinking.
Oh, like what else?
PFAS, like I'm thinking of like things that,
The uses of antimony?
or what the byproduct, if there are any byproducts that in the environment after the process.
Oh, such as negative constituents or whatever. Well, I've got my expert here. So the question I think Beck's asked is, through the process of recovering antimony out of antimony and concentrate, what are any of the downstream or waste streams that may come off of that could be deleterious?
What we do make out of the antimony plant, there will be a residue,
Mhm.
and it's going to be primarily a gypsum. And in that gypsum stream will be the impurities that came from the ore,
Mhm.
and that solid will get characterized and will work with IDEQ, and it will be disposed of properly. But all of the bad stuff ends up in that.
Okay,
The other things that's only part of the story, because frankly, Sunshine's doing a really neat thing. The other part of the story is we make antimony. We're going to make calcium thiosulfate, which is a fertilizer. And as a result, we make considerably less gypsum than we would have if we would have continued running. Normally, it would just go to the gypsum product, and that's where the waste would go. And the antimony process is very clean. And we do a zero liquid discharge, so we're not discharging the ions into the tailings pond or into the rivers. The calcium thiosulfate allows us to run the zero liquid discharge a lot easier because the trace ions like chlorides, if you let them go around and around forever, they build up to a level you'd eat up your plant eventually. So the thiosulfate allows us to bleed some of those highly mobile ions that aren't dangerous. But if you let them build up, there's a problem. But it's a really neat process, and we'll get to go through it. But we do make a gypsum residue. That's where the bad nasties go. And it will be characterized. I have to run the test with all of the new stuff to determine what that solid is. And I can't tell you what that solid's going to be until I can characterize exactly what we produce. In the past, it was pretty inert.
okay.
But I can't use past, I have to have future.
Yeah, when we say
Right.
this is all the design, right? The engineering, environmental, the metallurgical design work. It's a concept right now. It's essentially how it was done in the past. Mike's taking it to a new level, which is both near net zero discharge, as well as new standards for the environment that we have to meet, whether it's on the air or the water side.
Is that the same gypsum that's in like sheetrock?
Well, it is, except you wouldn't use it in sheetrock because that's where all the other things that came in with the ore came in. I wouldn't put it in sheetrock and I wouldn't let my kids chew on it.
There's an old gypsum pond in the Silver Valley that took the waste product that EPA is addressing right now.
Okay, but just then as a friendly reminder, antimony is interesting to us, but Sunshine has always been a silver producer. Again, the Bunker Hill, that was a lead zinc, it was really a zinc mine. Lucky Friday, lead, silver. Sunshine was silver. Secondary by payable products was really copper and antimony over the time. Not much lead, almost no zinc, no gold. This is almost no gold. The metallurgist here who's a scientist, well, there was about 1 ounce that was produced over a century, Tom. So technically there was some gold. Okay, I'll concede that. The point is, we're not a gold mine either. We're a silver. Okay, so deposits found in metasediments. That's all. Rock, it's not acid generating, it's acid consuming. So it's good stuff. And a lot of the rock in the valley is actually used for reclamation work where there are acid generating areas because it consumes, it wants to eat acid. That's why you don't see a lot of acid stains in the valley, for the most part. Just general, because I start to close out here, just, continuing to enhance and push good employee and community support. Health and safety's been really good with the employees there. We've had no serious or substantial injuries, no citations of serious or substantial nature from our regulators, nothing from the environmental groups while we are inspected quarterly. Everything is so far so good. We do have a lot of women working for us, but the national average in mining is 14%. We're about 16%. We were killing it there for a while. 6 months ago, we were at 40%. But then all these miners are coming back and there's not a lot of ladies that like to get all geared up and go drill with hand drills and blow rocks up underground. So we're losing our edge there. But anyways, things are going well. We have a great, again, back to the whole thing about power of relationships, but a couple of years ago, Sunshine had submitted an application to the Restoration Partnership, which was really, with the tribe and the resource trustees in and around pulling out a dam on Big Creek that prevents, it's a fish barrier. And it's been a long process going through, not the approval side, that actually went well, but just working with HMH, the tribe, the regulators. BLM's been great, Forest Service. But there's been a real esprit de corps that's developed out of that on this project, trying to move this thing forward, getting to know each other, how we all do business, sharing of ideas. But once we can do that, we can open up about 14 miles of fish habitat that's been blocked by dams in this Big Creek stream that runs right next to the mine that's never had tailings dumped in it. So it's a really great stream to deal with and to help improve. And it's been a really good relationship because as we've been going forward, other things happen. We find garbage that is up the creek and we want to clean it. And I'll start with Rebecca, who will put me in touch with Doug Evans, and we'll talk to other people about the permissions to, we'll go clean it, but it's going to take some gear or whatever. But things can start happening fast. And so we're watching over like BLM land. And then just in the last month, we're doing some work on a pipeline and BLM says, hey, if you guys, Tom, you might look at putting in your pipeline corridor that you're going to require in 4 years from now. Let's just rope that into this permit right now because it makes sense. And we're watching over my back too. I love that. That's just the power of good relationships. And then just working with the valley. This is just that restoration partnership on the dam. Talked enough about that. Hoping to get the first phase of this done by the third quarter of this year. So more on that. That's our stand-in chairman here. And then that's up at our office. They're just talking about.
Hey, Chris.
And then finally working on other small mammal habitat opportunities. We've dug open some of these old portals. I talked about the Blake Tunnel number 1, number 2. Well, we dug it open. It's been closed for well over 100 years. And we just open that up, kind of see what we've got there, a little bit of air, water back in there. So then clean that up, put in a culvert, make sure it's safe, cover it all over then. And then we'll want to start revegetating, screened. But now small mammals can go back and forth and have a place that are up on the hills that, it's a thing, but I want to see where that goes. And if somebody's willing to start coming in and then doing some wildlife biology studies on that, just see if there's opportunities there too. If we do have some endangered species, that we can attract them.
I was wondering if that's bat habitat. There's bats that live in there.
Yeah, well, we know that there are other ones up there, but
Cool.
so, but these are sitting there and why not? This was a community service just up on Big Creek. This showed up on Facebook last summer. It was a video, somebody just said, this is disgusting. And they were hitting the Forest Service and then they were hitting the BLM. This was about 2 miles up from our property, up Big Creek at a campsite. That is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that is bad. And that's where we got the phone chain going about, hey, we want to go up and clean it. Being private sector, we just want to go guerrilla assault it, right? It's like, screw it, let's go, get the excavator, we're going up there. So, hey, I'll give Rebecca, geez, through this committee's been a good source of information. I'll say, hey, we're gonna go up there, clean this thing up, any advice? She says, yeah, I'd call the BLM first, and talk to them. And sure enough, there is a procedure for going on there and cleaning on their property and disturbing things that I really didn't know. I thought Good Samaritans could do Good Samaritan work, but through that process, we finally were able to go in there and clean it. And that was like 30 hours later. From that garbage to cleaning it up and restoring it the way it is. Now we run a weekly cleanup group of, when we take 2-3 hours a week, just go clean the area that's around our operation.
And McGilvery gave or had a tote that we could put the waste in
Mhm.
for free.
Yeah, just people working together. Why not? Just why do it any other way? So finally, as I just close up, so in the last 12, 14 years, we're just consolidating land, consolidating all the information from geology, metallurgy, history. We're doing some new drilling over the next 2 years, developing a couple more miles of underground tunnel. Looking for what would be a plan that would take you into production about 2029. Saying continue our outreach with our connected groups for just communication, being transparent, and just building a committed team. So I like to think Sunshine's better. And we're different. Over to any other questions. Thanks. Sorry.
How do you get from that rock to Holden Silver? Like, what is the processing to do that?
Oh, to get to pure silver?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Mick.
You can't even handle it.
Yeah, this is what we.
It's like-
So then that's just
Jam.
silver.
The first step that we do is if the ore gets ground and it goes through a flotation process where we have bubble air and the sulfide minerals stick to the bubbles. And that sulfide that sticks to the bubble is a concentrate because we removed it from the dirt. And then that concentrate gets filtered. Oh, and one item that Sunshine's doing, instead of having the slurry from the mill go directly to the tailings pond and then having to discharge that water, Sunshine is putting in filters. And we're going to reuse as much water in the mill as practical, which is the intent of the design. So that's one improvement. Back to your question.
You're gonna have to keep your meeting tight.
Yeah.
He'll take you on a long walk.
Try and not go down too many rabbit holes. I was going fast on flotation now. Then that concentrate goes into the antimony plant we were talking about, where Sunshine uses a proprietary process that they developed in the 30s, put in practice in the 40s, and we updated in 2025, 2026. It's a new process, zero liquid discharge, where we can make antimony metal, sodium antimonate, and we're working on evaluating making antimony trioxide, which is the major product that people use. That's what goes into plastics and other things. So we're updating the project. Zero liquid discharge is a big deal there. We're also working on the air permit so that I'm trying to make it so that you can't even see the steam that comes out of the boiler that runs the process. You know how most buildings that are running, you see this big stack that's doing nice clean steam. There's not a problem with IDQ with it, but we're trying to, common theme, we're trying to recover as much water. So if I condense that steam, it's nice clean water that I can then use in my zero liquid discharge and make that process a little bit less consuming of water.
Okay, I'm gonna interject. Oh, we can carry this on after the meeting if that's all right. Yes, I want to be mindful of everybody's time.
Yeah.
But from a layman's standpoint, how do you get silver out of ore? Think about like when you take a dirty lasagna pan and you put it in a sink and you put soap in there.
Yeah.
And you got the suds, you create whatever you call it, hydrophobic relationship, but and then the lasagna sticks on the bubbles and all the other junk, the silverware and the plates and all that stay on the bottom. And if you just skim that top section off, the metallics, like silver metallic ions, want to stick to a bubble. That's a stable water bubble, and that gets skimmed off. And then that's the concentrate, which can get converted through some chemical or hydromet process. And then that goes to a smelter, refinery, melted, heated, beated, and treated, or electrowinning, and it produces metal. That's
That is
the short.
fascinating.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, so just in closing, what year did the mine start?
1884, no,
Oh, okay, good. How many ounces were produced in Silver Valley?
1.3 billion.
What year was the fire?
1972.
What are the secondary minerals produced at Sunshine?
Company, copper.
Zinc.
Sand? How deep is the mine?
6,000 feet.
Wait, what's the main fault going through Silver Valley?
Osborne. You guys are good.
Yeah, what year was the jewel shaft sunk?
1816? No, sunk.
Yeah.
Was it 1916?
14.
What do you mean by sunk?
When was it installed? It's okay, Beck, you won the prize, so.
Oh, no, I don't, no.
Yeah, so the shaft was sunk in 1935, but it was a 1916 hoist.
Oh.
You're right, so. Okay, well then that's, are you declining this,
I already have one, so I would love
okay,
it.
the second one I could hear was dead.
There you go.
And
Nice.
you were right on the back end.
Wow, nice.
That was super interesting.